Strange satellites fly through the dark heavens. But these beautiful cone jellies are in fact swimming in water. This colourless, odourless fluid envelops more than 2/3 of our planet Earth. So perhaps our world would be better named Planet Water. Where light penetrates the upper ocean, the seagoing population flourishes in extraordinary diversity. Water quenches more than thirst. Delicate gills breathe dissolved gases. Hungry plants and animals feed on circulating nutrients. But which are the very richest waters of life? Surprisingly, the answer is not the deep ocean, but a considerably rougher neighbourhood, the coastline. The coasts are a complex matrix where earth, air and water collide. Animals from each environment interact at these rich margins, and powerful currents and waves can transport them from one zone to another. These shores prove the ocean's power to deliver, to carry pioneers like the marine iguana. Its ancestors were washed up onto the Galapagos Islands, having most likely travelled from the coast of South America, almost 1,000 kilometres away. Unlike the iguanas, some of the residents here seem to have mastered the turbulent seas. Galapagos sea lions. Sea lions haven't broken their ties with the land, even though they move more easily in water. They live in a sort of halfway house and still return to the shore to relax and raise their families. They are not the only animals to give up mobility out of the water for expertise in it. Unique flightless cormorants have abandoned life in the air for the harsh rocks and sea. They even court on the water. And courting means nest building. The best nests are lined with seaweed, and it's the male's job to come up with the goods. Back to the sea again. The female will actually place the weed, and she patiently awaits the next offering. Much of the seaweed he brings his mate will be used to line the nest, but not all of it. Some of the greenery is simply a gift, the avian equivalent of a bunch of flowers. The offering is probably an attempt to strengthen the pair's close bond. Each Galapagos bird species plays its own distinctive mating game. A waved albatross woos a female with some impressive beak bashing. Some species respond to a nod, others to fancy footwork. Up in the cliffs, blue-footed boobies show off their brightly coloured feet to prospective mates. Using colour as a lure isn't just for the birds. Male marine iguanas also make a splash during the mating season. Their skin breaks out in red, sending a bold signal to any available females. There's little for the iguanas to eat on these virtually barren volcanic islands, so they feed mostly in the sea, where they can graze on algae. But the water is so cold that even the sturdiest iguanas can stay submerged for only a short time before they need to warm themselves on the rocks. These waters provide a living, but it is not an easy one. The surf sets a pounding rhythm along rocky coastlines. Gentler waves lap the coast of Borneo. Like every coastline, this shore also pulses to an even slower rhythm, the rhythm of the tides. Here, each low tide exposes the strange aerial roots of mangrove trees. This bizarre forest, with its roots in salt water, enables proboscis monkeys to live at the very edge of the sea. During low tide, it's much easier to make their way to fresh feeding grounds by walking along the exposed beach, even though it's a bit like crossing a bed of nails. The coast is clear. It's feeding time for all the beach dwellers. Time to emerge from their burrows and go about their twice-daily business. The monkeys scout the mangrove forest, moving from tree to tree in search of tender new shoots. Mud skippers leave their sandy burrows to browse on bits of algae that wash up with every high tide. The mud skipper is a very unusual fish. It can store water in its gills, so it can come out of the sea to feed. Low tide is the time to do a bit of housekeeping. Fiddler crabs have also emerged to forage for algae. Every activity is dictated by the timetable of the tides, even war. Male fiddler crabs joust for supremacy. Male mudskippers also face off in battles for territory. The tide turns, and the water rises with startling speed. The shoreline changes once again, and the fiddler crabs prepare for the deluge. High tide is a mixed blessing. It delivers fresh deposits of algae, but the waves can also wash the crabs out into deep water. The mud skippers run the same risk. The rising water has caught out the proboscis monkeys. Now they must pay the penalty and wade awkwardly through waist-high waters. As always, these sociable animals travel as a group. Proboscis monkeys are primarily vegetarians, so their food is not rich in energy. Like other browsers, they take every opportunity to feed. Their coastal home has been refreshed by the tides. Elsewhere, the relentless rhythm of the tide attacks the coastline, eroding the shore. But a mangrove forest actually builds land. The trees' tangled roots trap sediment, which becomes the basis of new soil. As the mangrove forest creeps forward, larger trees colonize from behind. Tides seem like a local event, and in some ways they are. High and low tides occur at different times along different shores, but they happen all around the planet, a global phenomenon created by a distant presence. As the moon glides silently around the Earth, its gravitational pull drags two bulges of water after it on opposite sides of the world. These bulges form the two high tides each day, and in their wake, two low tides follow. Low tides uncover a hidden supply of food along sandy shores. Beaches can be full of tiny organisms we never see. Shorebirds know they are there, but they must be quick to take advantage of the feast. Once the water has reached its lowest point, it's only a moment before it begins to rise again, protecting its rich cargo of food. One high tide triggers the arrival of thousands of strange visitors to the east coast of North America, horseshoe crabs. They have been coming here every year since before the dinosaurs walked the planet. The crabs leave the water only briefly to spawn a new generation. And that happens only at this time of year, when the gravitational pull of both moon and sun creates the highest tides. The female crabs release millions of eggs to be fertilized by the males. We do not know why or when the crabs first came to this shore, but we do know that birds had yet to evolve. The ritual remains the same, but times have changed. Now, every year, shorebirds gobble up the eggs nearly as fast as they are released. The horseshoe crabs continue to lay their eggs. But so many eggs are released that even after the birds eat their fill, there are enough left to establish another generation of crabs. And it's only because of this glut of eggs that the birds have the strength to make their arduous annual migrations. Tides affect every coastline, but they are surface movements. The power of the tides pales in comparison with the power of deep ocean currents. Currents speed across the ocean floor, driven by differences in temperature, churning up the ocean as they do so. When deep cold water currents hit the hidden edge of a continental shelf, they thrust upwards, creating a special zone called an upwelling. Although these are waves of cold water, upwelling zones are often far more fertile than tropical seawater. The cold currents bring cargoes of nutrients with them, which they drag up from deep on the ocean floor. The upwelling zone off the coast of California nourishes giant kelp plants. These zones are the savannas of the sea, and like the African plains, they support multitudes, from tiny phytoplankton to graceful harbour seals. One small patch of this giant forest can be a sea otter's whole world. Sea otters spend almost their entire lives bobbing amid the kelp, often entwining themselves in the fronds that float on the surface in order to rest or sleep without drifting away. A sea otter needs to go ashore only during very severe storms. These endearing marine mammals are extremely intelligent, especially when it comes to finding food. The underwater forest floor is where the otters find their prey, shellfish and sea urchins. An adult sea otter must eat the equivalent of 25% of its own weight each day in order to maintain its body heat in these chilly waters. That's the equivalent of a human eating about 100 hamburgers. Stones make useful tools to bash a meal loose. This shellfish is an abalone. Human fishermen often need a crowbar to pry one from a rock. This isn't a tidy process. Cormorants often come scrounging for scraps. The otters must return to the surface to breathe and eat. At last, a chance to eat in peace. More or less. The cormorant keeps popping up to keep an eye on his meal ticket. California's sea otters also use stones to get into their food on the surface. This otter puts a stone on its stomach to pound the shell against, while other otters use a tapping technique. The right stone is such a useful tool that some even carry a favourite one stashed in an armpit between meals. The upwelling zone provides everything the otters need: food, shelter, even a safe place to raise their young. But it's the cold, deep-water current and the microscopic life it brings that sustains them all. On the other side of North America, another deep ocean current creates spectacular fertility. The Atlantic coast of Newfoundland is home to the largest gannet colonies in the world. The gannets' eyesight is so good that they can actually spot shoals of fish from high above the sea. They plunge towards their targets from heights of up to 40 meters. During nesting season, the cliffs are studded with mating pairs. Although there are thousands of gannets, fish are so plentiful in these waters that enormous flocks of gulls can also thrive alongside. It makes for a crowded coast. Fish form the bulk of seabirds' diets, so many seabirds will breed when the fish are most plentiful. Often this coincides with when the fish themselves are breeding, drawn together in huge numbers to special spawning grounds. The supply of fish on this coast is especially abundant in spring, when the capelin come to spawn. For these little fish, mating is a very risky business. In order to secure the safety of their young, thousands of breeding pairs swim right up onto the beach. The female burrows into the sand to lay her eggs, as the male wraps around her to fertilize them. Their eggs will be relatively safe here, but the adults are not. Most of them will die in the process, stranded on the shore. But their death throes do have a purpose. They have spawned a new generation. A nutrient-rich current can support the life of an entire coastline, steadily delivering its vital cargo of food across millions of years. The cliffs of Patagonia in South America show the effects of just such a current. Fossilized shells are embedded in the cliffs, the remains of clams and giant oysters that lived here 20 million years ago. The cliff itself is a relic from a time when South America was an island. People have never colonized this remote and barren coastline, so these waters offer marine animals a safe haven. A southern right whale brings her calf into a sheltered bay. The young whale already weighs 4 tons, but even at this size in the open sea it would be vulnerable to predators and to stormy weather. Its mother can tend and feed it more easily in shallow water. But there's little food for her in the bay, and the calf needs feeding. It must gain about 10 tons and grow 8 meters in its first few months of life before it can head for deeper waters. Fortunately, the mother whale has prepared for this retreat. She fed out in the deep ocean and has gained enough weight to nurse her enormous baby. She probably weighs at least 50 tons. She has to, in order to provide her calf with 125 litres of milk each day. The oceans support whales not only by providing massive quantities of food, the water also supports them, quite literally. Whales can only grow so large because they're buoyed up by water. Whales are not the only marine mammals to seek out this coastal sanctuary. Southern sea lions come ashore here to raise their young. They come to this coastline for the same reason the whales do. The land is devoid of humans and large predators. They're a raucous bunch. The males spar for territory and access to females. The females have little choice but to put up with the jostling. Even though their heads are layered with a built-in helmet of thick fat, many of the males bear the scars of past encounters. It's the young pups who are at risk if they get too close to the action. This one had better find its mother fast. The pups are born on shore 1 year after conception. It's a brief respite on land. The pups begin to go into the water when they're just 3 to 4 weeks old. Each mother and pup must be able to find each other so the pup can feed. Somehow they manage to pick out each other's distinctive calls in all the din. Magellanic penguins also come to the Patagonian coast to mate and breed. The penguins are prepared to pay a high price for the safety they find here. It's 2,400 kilometres from their wintering grounds out in the Atlantic. This is the first time they've been near dry land in 6 months. But this coast makes an ideal nesting ground. One parent can tend the youngsters, while the other catches fish. The young penguins have voracious appetites. They have just 6 weeks of feeding and growing on shore before they begin their ocean-going lives. A parent returns with a full load of fish. The delivery system is simple and direct: regurgitation. The only large land animals to live here are guanacos, descended from the long-extinct North American camel. The guanacos can just about eke out a living on this barren strip of land, which stands in stark contrast to its abundant coastal waters. It's time for the penguins' families to hit the beach. Their trek to the sea proves these animals are built for water, not land. Thousands of penguin pairs and their new young are preparing to return to their Atlantic feeding grounds. But before they set off, the youngsters must brave the cold water for the first time. There's no turning back now. Young sea lions make the same rite of passage to their ocean-going life. Some won't even survive their first swim. Orcas, killer whales, are intelligent animals. They have learned that this is the time of year when the young sea lions take to the water. A lucky escape. Orcas are the largest of the dolphin family, and like many other dolphins, they hunt in family groups. The sea lions are up against a deadly team. The orcas retreat with their catch. It might seem to be a cruel sea for the sea lions, but for the orca family, these are very definitely waters of life. Most of the sea lion pups will survive to reach deeper water, and the coastline will be quiet again until the seasonal visitors return. Along every fringe of land, water supports life. But not every coast lies in a temperate climate. South of Patagonia lies a coastal boundary that is far less distinct and far less permanent. In Antarctica, during large parts of the year, the coastline is not land but water itself, in its solid form, ice. Adelie penguins find respite from freezing water only by coming up onto frozen water. But this ice is melting and breaking away from the rocky shore. It's summer and the end of the breeding season. Like the Magellanic penguins in Patagonia, this large colony has been busy fattening up their young, ready for the cold Antarctic waters. But this colony was not always as close to the shore as they are now. In fact, the reason their youngsters are so close to the sea when they're big enough to leave is not as obvious as we might think. It is the result of careful planning. When the adults arrived in the cold spring, winter sea ice had spread out all around this shore, pushing the water's edge far away from their rocky breeding grounds. The only way to reach them was to trek inland. And as we know, penguins aren't built for walking. Snow surfing is the easiest way to travel. Once they reach their destination, the Adelies pair off and mate. It will take a month for the eggs to hatch, and each parent will work a 12-day shift looking after them, while the other parent feeds out at sea. After hatching, the chicks have only 60 days to fatten up before they're ready to leave. And during this time, rising temperatures melt the sea ice, bringing the shore closer to them. In this way, the Adelies save their young an unnecessary trek to the sea and a waste of all the energy reserves they have built up. The penguins' closest neighbours are Weddell seals. Their young have already been born, and the baby seals must quickly gain thick layers of blubber if they're to survive in the freezing cold. Their mothers provide them with some of the richest, most fattening milk in the animal world. But a mother must leave her baby behind in order to feed herself. Hunting below the ice sheet is dangerous. A seal often finds her breathing hole rapidly freezing over. She uses specially adapted teeth to grind away at the ice. Only when the hole is large enough to stay open for a time will a seal dive and begin to hunt. It's a repetitive but essential struggle. life and the life of her pup depend on her ability to return to the surface. Youngsters have to wait on the surface. At this age, a pup is too buoyant to swim to any depth, and it can't begin to hold its breath as long as its mother can. The Antarctic seems unforgiving, but even here there are mercies to be found. With spring, the platform of sea ice, frozen seawater, begins to break up. The solid coastal boundary rapidly retreats. Entire cliffs of glacial ice shatter. This is freshwater ice formed from thousands of years of snowfall. The coastline of an entire continent is completely redrawn. Next winter, it will be redrawn yet again. The seasonal change along the Antarctic coastline is dramatic and rapid, but water constantly shapes and reshapes every coastline. Waves grind shores to grit and sand and shift vast amounts of material around the planet. The sea shapes every shore, every island individually. Even two adjacent stretches of coastline can be completely different. On this island in the Falklands, penguins arriving on the rocky side had better be prepared for a bumpy landing. Those arriving on the other side of the same island can make a much easier landing. Here, the sea has deposited its contents: sand. These new arrivals are already enjoying a day at the beach. While back at the other side, their comrades are still coping with the surf and slippery rocks. The slim margin where the land meets the sea has many faces. Surely some of the loveliest profiles are in the tropics. Here, a coastline may have an ally in its defense: a coral reef. A reef slows incoming waves as a speed bump slows speeding cars. But these defenses are alive. A coral reef is a colony of tiny animals. Over the years, new generations add fresh layers, and the reef becomes a beautiful buttress of living rock. The sheltering corals attract tropical fish in every colour of the rainbow. It's not just the corals that have hard coatings, so do crabs. But not all of them are born with them. The hermit crab, with no hard shell of its own, has to scrounge for shelter. As the crab grows, it must search out a larger dwelling place. If the shell's already occupied, well, an eviction notice can be served. But the general rule is, if the shell fits, wear it. Every resident of the reef must create new generations. There are no exceptions. Under cover of darkness, the corals begin to reproduce. Triggered by a full moon, they release millions of eggs and sperm. The water turns milky with the makings of new corals. Fish will eat many of the eggs, but a few will grow and add their own skeletons to the reef. Others will drift away. The eggs are at the mercy of the currents. They will go wherever the ocean takes them, perhaps to other tropical waters, where they may begin a new reef. This is one part of the ocean where the coral eggs stand no chance of survival. It's a bizarre world at the very bottom of the sea. But even here, in these lightless depths, water supports life. Boiling hot sulphurous fumes rise up from deep rifts in the Earth's crust. It's in just such poisonous conditions, however, that some of the first life on Earth may have been born. Primitive bacteria, not unlike the microscopic life that lives here today. If this is the birthplace of life, where is the birthplace of land, of new coastlines? At hot spots in the Earth's crust, like those in Hawaii. Eventually, the volcanic eruption slows, and the lava cools to form solid land. Huge plumes of steam rise up where the lava hits the sea. A new coastline is in the making. Colonizers arrive, carried on the winds that sweep up and over the new land. Rising mists supply the land with life-giving rain. Plants, too, rapidly colonize the land. The land is transformed by lush vegetation, but it can only survive if there is water. This is the miracle of life beyond the coasts. Salty seawater becomes sweet fresh water when rain clouds form over the sea, leaving the salt behind. Fresh water with the power to nourish and shape the land. Hawaii's spectacular cliffs and valleys were created by flowing water, water that originated in the sea. Seabirds travel thousands of kilometers across the oceans, so an island makes a vital resting point. But once an island forms, it's at the mercy of the ocean. Over time, even a mountain of an island can be dismantled by rainfall, by a rise in sea level, and by the waves pounding at its shores. Midway Island is the westernmost in the Hawaiian chain. Midway once towered out of the water. Now it stands just 4 meters above sea level, at its highest point. Half of the island is likely to be underwater in just 100 years. Everything changes, however long those changes take. But for now, this low-lying island is a crucial rest spot for seabirds. Laysan and black-footed albatrosses come to Midway to take refuge and to mate. The young albatrosses born here are creatures of the air and water, not the land. Unlike their parents, they are prisoners here until they learn to fly. The albatross's long wings make it an expert glider, but they make it very hard to flap its way into the sky. This is a dangerous place for a novice flyer. Tiger sharks know when it's time for the fledglings to make their practice flights. An adult gets away. The young bird's gangly wings are a liability. The sharks take a serious toll of the fledgling birds, but many are born, and the population is not damaged by the predation. The albatrosses have depended on Midway for thousands of years. If the island disappears beneath the waves, future generations will have to find a new breeding ground. Perhaps the oceans will offer up another island for them. The oceans support thousands of marine species, but seawater is only part of a life-giving cycle. Liquid salt water is transformed into vapor by heat and leaves its salt behind. In this form, water is at the mercy of the winds. Far from the sea, fresh water falls from the clouds on dry and thirsty soil. Rain sustains plants and animals across every continent. The salty waters of the ocean are transformed into fresh waters of life. Our planet is surrounded by water, not just on its surface but throughout its atmosphere. Water vapour rises to form the aerial reservoirs we call clouds, destined to fall again as rain. This is an endless cycle that circulates fresh water between lakes and seas and sky. Early explorers came across one body of water so vast they were convinced it must be a new sea, but it was in fact a lake, Lake Tanganyika in Africa. It's a very ancient lake, fed by huge volumes of fresh river water. Fresh water not only quenches the thirst of plants and animals, it carries nutrients into the soil, feeding vegetation. Drenched in moisture, the lake region is a paradise for plants and animals. This lake is as deep as an ocean, over 1,300 meters in places. Its depths are bleak, with virtually no nutrients and no life. But as in the oceans, where light penetrates the upper layers of water, the lake is very much alive. River otters mingle with more kinds of fish than there are in all of Europe. And this spot-necked otter is after a particularly intriguing one. It's a puffer fish, and its brilliant defense is working. The otter loses interest. Pufferfish are usually found in the sea. This is a freshwater cousin of the many saltwater species. The motionless football of a fish wasn't much fun, and the otter's still in the mood for a game. Turtle chasing will do fine. And a friend soon joins in. This is not a good day to be a turtle. Wrong place at the wrong time again. It's wandered into the territory of a yellow coolie. Lake Tanganyika is the setting for an unusual fish story. The lake is filled with more than 200 species of fish, all evolved from one unremarkable ancestor, carried here by a river. These fish are all cichlids, and they all evolved here in the lake. Cichlids adapted to fill every niche the lake has to offer. Some have jaws so flexible they can suck algae off rocks. Others pick at their greens. There are now so many different cichlid species, and in such numbers, that they keep this vast body of water clear of the plant debris that clouds most lakes. It's so clear the otters have no chance of making a sneak attack. So they work together as a rapid strike force. Powerful feet, sharp claws, and of course good teamwork means that otters are among the few animals that can catch cichlids. The lake is home to the only freshwater sardines in the world. In fact, they're unrelated to marine sardines, but have evolved to fill a similar niche. Cichlids are not found anywhere else on Earth, but they are very successful colonizers of this lake. However, just because they all come from the same ancestor doesn't mean they don't compete with each other. They stake and defend territories. Some cichlids even form gangs and go on the rampage against other species. Black cichlids look after their newly hatched young in craters they dig from the sandy lake bottom. But whole clutches may be lost to the passing mob. A successful parent will defend its young, and maybe about 1 in 10,000 will make it to adulthood, which is good for a cichlid. Lake Tanganyika is so large that it creates its own weather system. Storms are localized but can turn violent. Cyclones suck the lake into the sky inside towering waterspouts. In Central Africa's tropical warmth, the waters of life are continually recycled. Water is essential to life, but life adapts, even to the very driest conditions. Deserts appear devoid of water. But animals will colonize any environment, adapting to the harshest conditions, as long as there's some water somewhere. This is the Kalahari Desert in southern Africa. It hardly seems possible, but wildlife survives even here, where the only visible body of water is a mirage. Small insects, like termites, are mobile sacs of water and protein for other animals, like barking geckos. The desert can also support large colonies. Weaver birds build elaborate nest communities. They're lucky. They can fly to distant pools to find their water. The desert can even sustain mammals, small and large. Springbok browse at its scrubby margins, and so do their predators, lions. Like all of the large desert animals, the lion gets its moisture almost entirely from its food. All of these animals are perfectly at home in a place so dry a human being couldn't last much more than a day. Although we think of them as permanently dry, many deserts do get a short deluge of rain at least once a year. It may only be a brief respite from the drought, but every plant and animal is programmed to respond instantly to the arrival of water. The hard-baked soil reveals one form of life that has been waiting a long time for this moment. Bullfrogs buried themselves at the end of the last rains, lying dormant for nearly a year. The new rains soak the dry earth, reviving the slumbering frogs, and they emerge ready to mate. They can only breed while the surface water lasts, while there are freshwater pools in which their young can feed and grow. For a short time, the desert is transformed. Many insects and plants rush to complete their life cycles. In only a few weeks, the ground will be parched once again. For now, the desert is a riot of colour and life. But one region of the Kalahari is wet year-round. The Okavango Delta. Thousands of years ago, a massive earthquake diverted the flow of the Okavango River, turning it inland and creating a marsh in the middle of a desert. Like Lake Tanganyika, this watery world is a rich one. Much of the water is shallow, creating vast marshlands. These conditions are ideal for wading birds, like storks, herons and cranes. This is the largest wetland in the world. When the annual rains top up the delta, it sprawls across more than 15,000 square kilometres. In most parts of the world, rain does arrive, eventually. But some animals don't just sit and wait. They travel hundreds of kilometres to be in the right place at the right time. Every year, vast herds of wildebeest make an annual 2,400-kilometre round trip, chasing the waters of life. In the spring, they migrate across Africa's Serengeti plains. At this time of year, the grass has dried out in the southern plains. The wildebeest somehow sense that it's time to move north, toward the coming rains and the lush new grass they will produce. There is a terrible obstacle in their path, the Grumeti River. This river is home to freshwater crocodiles. They are the largest in the world. Some are 6 meters long, and they live here for a good reason: a regular supply of meat. Thirst forces the wildebeest to the river's edge. They must drink. Seized by a 2-ton crocodile, the 200-kilogram wildebeest stands little chance of escape. The wildebeest see their opportunity. Thousands live to complete the journey, and they and their descendants repeat it again and again. Wherever there is fresh water, you will find wildlife. Animals of all shapes and sizes drink, feed, swim and breed in it. In Uganda, elephants and hippos gather in and around the Great Kazinga Channel that connects Lake George and Lake Edward. The daily presence of these large water-loving mammals has an extraordinary effect. Their dung often goes straight into the water. The dung fertilizes the lake and supports the larvae of a creature that is minute compared to the elephants and hippos, but vastly outnumbers them. Clouds of lake flies. Early explorers saw the clouds from a distance and thought the lake was on fire. The flies are tiny, the size of mosquitoes, but at the beginning of the rainy season they swarm in billions. The flies hatch en masse, creating a seasonal bonanza for birds. Fish follow the rising larvae to the lake's surface, so this is also the time of year fishermen can make their best catches. Ultimately, no lake, river or marsh exists without the presence of one miraculous substance. Water. Some places receive so much rain that water courses over every surface. There is enough rain to soak the ground and plenty left over. This is the rainforest of Brazil, one of the wettest places on Earth. So much rain falls in the wet season that the Amazon River and its tributaries swell into raging torrents. The Amazon basin fills with water, but the rivers cannot carry it out to the sea quickly enough. The rivers rise and rise, and the rainforest undergoes a complete transformation. The forest floor has disappeared, and the flooding will last for 5 months. The wildlife of this extraordinary forest takes this in its stride and adjusts to an entirely different world. There's only one way for a hungry three-toed sloth to get from tree to tree. For the sloth, this is a hard time of year. It's considerably easier for the fish. Large arowana fish have the freedom of the forest in their search for food, below and above the water. All the boundaries are blurred. Hatchetfish are naturally at home in the water, but they have an astonishing defence when they're under threat. Vertical take-off and landing helps keep the hatchetfish out of harm, but not all fish are so lucky. And not all predators are so easy to see. The Amazon leaf fish has an excellent disguise for a flooded forest floor. The fish are used to swimming in and around fallen leaves, so the leaf fish can sneak up on its prey unnoticed. And it can also hide from its own predators. The fishing birds of the Amazon basin are spoiled for choice. There are more than 2,000 different species of freshwater fish here. There are only 300 in all of Europe. The diversity of fish is astonishing in one of evolution's prime laboratories. In this wet tropical forest, some kind of fresh fruit is available all year round. Tree-dwelling primates like the wakaris may be stuck in the trees when the Amazon floods, but they have plenty to eat. The fruit trees have several means of dispersing their seeds. Monkeys and birds carry some off. Many will fall into the water. In most places, birds, mammals and even insects transport seeds. But here, fish take on the role, carrying seeds they have eaten throughout the flooded forest. Large seeds need the services of large distributors. The pacu is a giant relative of the piranha. It can crack even the hardest nutshells. Its teeth are more like those of a horse than a fish. The people of the Amazon depend on its fish, but at this time of year they can be hard to find. Freshwater dolphins are also hunting for fish. Boto River dolphins are unusual, the world's only freshwater dolphin. But like their marine cousins, they are expert echolocators. They emit sounds that help them see their quarry in the murky water. This fisherman has no such built-in sonar. How is he to know where to set his nets in all this water? There is no obvious river anymore and no banks to funnel the fish together. So almost any place will do. As long as there are dolphins nearby. The dolphins herd fish ahead of them. And some of the fish find themselves trapped in the nets. The dolphins take a few of the fish for themselves, but there are plenty for both man and dolphin alike. The Amazon and its tributaries form the largest drainage basin on the planet. All rivers are torrents of liquid energy, heading relentlessly downhill towards the sea. Small rivers join forces with larger rivers. Water is a life-giving force, but a fast-flowing river attacks the land, sculpting cliffs and valleys, washing away soil. Most living things have no choice but to go with the flow. Once a year, salmon struggle against it on their way to the streams in which they were born. In North America, they also have to get past grizzly bears. All the bears have to do is be in the right place at the right time. But they have made their own long migrations, crossing hundreds of kilometers to reach this spot. Here, they know the river will bring them a much-needed pre-winter feast. A fully grown salmon is a substantial source of protein for a bear. If it survives, a salmon's life is just one long round trip. The salmon's struggle is repeated in hundreds of rivers worldwide. Whether it's through the North Pacific or the English Channel, breeding salmon know when it's time to head home. The fish use their instinct and their sense of smell to find their way to the river where they were spawned. They lay their eggs in the shallower waters. The odds against completing the trip and successfully spawning a new generation are incredibly high. The adult salmon go no further. They die here, where they were born. Up to 5 meters of rain can fall here in a year, and the American dipper knows how to make the most of this watery world. It has an uncanny ability to catch its prey beneath the surface of the cold mountain streams. The dipper has a special layer of insulating underfeathers, and its eyes have an extra transparent membrane that allows it to see clearly underwater, like a diver with goggles. For a tiny bird, this is most unusual behaviour. Dippers make their homes in a perpetual torrent, even building their nests just behind the rushing water. They have a limitless supply of nest-building material, spongy moss, which the dippers shape into large domed shelters for their young. Water is so commonplace that it's easy to forget how beautiful and unusual it actually is. Water transforms the land, and it too is transformed, turning solid with a drop in temperature. Only 1/4 of all the fresh water on Earth exists as an accessible liquid. The remaining water is locked up for at least part of the year. Water in any form is a potent force. Come spring, blankets of snow are transformed back into liquid. At the poles, the Arctic and Antarctic ice caps hold 3/4 of the planet's fresh water in long-term cold storage. Floating sea ice is actually frozen seawater. Icebergs are a different form of ice entirely. They are made of freshwater ice, formed when large lumps of glaciers break loose where they reach the sea. Even in its frozen form, water supports life. Polar bears are strong swimmers, but they spend most of their time roaming the Arctic ice. Living in or on water, they are classed not as land animals, but marine mammals. They're perfectly adapted to this bleak white world. Polar bears range as far south as the edge of the Arctic ice shelf, using the ice as a vast diving platform from which they hunt for seals. Their sparkling snowsuits help them disappear, making it easier to catch their prey. The bears share their icebound world with a scavenger dressed in winter white, the Arctic fox. The foxes are also Arctic hunters, but will happily scavenge on food left behind by the bears. A female polar bear stretches after emerging from her winter den. Females spend the winter on their own or with their cubs. They can survive in relative warmth, thanks to the properties of one form of frozen water, snow. Snow traps air and insulates the den, keeping the bear's body heat inside. If the female is pregnant, then she will also have her cubs in the den and keep them hidden below the snow for their own protection. Male polar bears don't dig dens. It's believed that they wander the ice throughout the long, dark winter. There is plenty of water in the Arctic, but because most of it is frozen water, the region is as inhospitable as a desert. In fact, the polar ice caps are deserts, some of the coldest deserts in the world. Another snowbound region holds a warm secret: flowing water that carries heat from deep underground. In North America's Yellowstone Park, eerie mists rise through the forest, even in midwinter. Hot volcanic springs create a spa in the snow. Bison can survive very low temperatures, but many of them seek out the hot springs to thaw out and enjoy a respite from winter. This natural sauna creates an oasis of warmth. Even scavenging coyotes take time off to enjoy it. Some animals need the warmth to survive, but Yellowstone's otters are perfectly insulated against the cold. They certainly know how to make the most of their frozen world. Winter is even the time to mate. If a new litter is started now, the pups will not be born until the weather is much warmer. The waters of Yellowstone, a mix of freezing rivers and hot springs, support a broad range of wildlife. Some of its animal residents could never survive the brutal winter without the presence of the superheated water. In Yellowstone's hottest springs, water as hot as 100 degrees bubbles to the surface. This looks like an unlikely place to find any life at all. Springs much like these were possibly one of the very first waters of life, where primitive bacteria were born. Mats of simple organisms actually thrive in scalding springs. In places like Yellowstone and Iceland, water blasts from geysers in its third form, water vapour. In this case, hot water vapour, steam. In all of its forms, water is the very essence of life on Earth. The complex chemistry of life can take place only in a solution of liquid water. As a liquid, as ice, and even as steam, water supports a huge range of diverse species, from microscopic bacteria to blue whales. Some geothermal springs remain at a balmy temperature all year round. In the Florida springs, water bubbling up from underground is a constant 22 degrees. Limestone has soaked up millions of gallons of rain like a sponge. Where the pressure is high enough, the water is forced back out. Fish bask in the warm springs. This is a strange world few of us ever see. Hidden at the bottom of these pools is their source, the fresh water that percolates up through the limestone layers. Needlefish feed near the surface, mostly on the fry of other fish. They are not alone. Because these waters are always balmy and rich in minerals, hundreds of different species thrive here. Mullet are vegetarians, who could even be described as farmers. They graze on the algae that coat the seagrass and will even tend their crop, guarding a patch in order to maintain a healthy supply of food for themselves. As in every environment, where there is prey, there are predators. Cormorants living in these springs have the same problem as the otters in Lake Tanganyika. In clear water, their prey can see them coming. So the birds hunt in groups, trying to flush the fish from the grass. Cormorants are expert divers. Their feet are positioned at the very rear of their bodies to provide maximum thrust. Even so, hunting is difficult, and they're not always successful. After feeding, the birds dry themselves in the sun. During the winter, the warm water of the springs attracts migrants. Manatees come from the Gulf of Mexico to bask in the shallows. Although they spend much of their time in the ocean, they can also survive in freshwater. These gentle creatures are strict vegetarians, yet they grow up to 3 meters long. Unfortunately, manatees can be at great risk in freshwater. They move slowly, so they cannot easily get out of the path of motorboats. Many manatees bear scars caused by propeller blades. Freshwater comes in many forms. It may be fresh, but it's not new. Water has been endlessly recycled in an ancient process. From salty seawater to water vapour to rain across the ages. The Florida springs contain ancient underground water, and they support one species that's nearly as old as the water itself. Alligators, virtually unchanged from their prehistoric ancestors. They use water to help them communicate, generating a remarkable soundtrack that only they can create. This is a strange world. The waters themselves dance to subsonic bellows. This display quickly establishes which alligators are the strongest. The resulting hierarchy will be in place for months. It prevents potentially deadly fighting between these enormous reptiles. Water supports all life on Earth. It cycles through time, evaporating and refalling as rain again and again. The water molecules that fall on alligators living in North America today may have fallen on dinosaurs living in Asia long, long ago. There is no telling whether moisture stored in the clouds will be used next, or by whom, but wherever it falls, it will remain part of an endless cycle, supporting an infinite equation, life itself. Water is the very essence of life. Wherever there is water, there is astonishing variety and abundance. The human world depends on water too. Almost all the world's towns and cities are near permanent bodies of water. Water affects every aspect of our lives. In fact, we are water. 75% of the human body is water. But other animals also need it. There are now few places on Earth where humans and animals are not in competition for this essential resource. In the Amazon basin of South America, there is an ample supply of water. The largest river in the world supports lush rainforests. The animals of the forest rely on the plentiful waters to deliver food. Even a large cat, like the jaguar, depends on water. Even if the nearest water is only a small pool. It seems cats of all sizes share a taste for fish. The people of this region also depend on the river. A fisherman hauls in an enormous tucanare, enough food for a large family. This is one place where man and wild animal can fish the same waters in harmony. In fact, the local people hold their fellow fisherman, the jaguar, in high esteem. Both man and animal take only what they need. The natural balance is maintained. In some parts of the world, people actually fish with animals. Off the west coast of Africa, fishermen and dolphins pursue the same shoals of fish, together. The fishermen position their nets in the shallows. The men slap the water, and the commotion attracts nearby dolphins. The dolphins chase after the shoals of mullet that live along this coast, driving many of them into the waiting nets. Driving mullet against the nets makes an easy catch for the dolphins. And there are plenty left for the fishermen. These people may take large numbers of fish from the sea, but even after feeding their families and sending the surplus to market, their impact on the fish population is marginal. the same tactics can be used year after year. It's a method that works perfectly in this place to catch this fish, mullet. Catching different kinds of fish in different kinds of water calls for a variety of techniques. Seabirds have their own specific methods. Gannets are high divers, targeting their prey from great heights with pinpoint accuracy. Most of the birds in Britain's Shetland Islands are after the sand eels that live in the North Sea. Guillemots and razorbills patrol beneath the waves, using their wings to power down into deeper water. Cormorants are deep-sea explorers. Their large feet propel them through the water, and they literally stick their necks out in search of food. Other seabirds manage to fish out of water. The skua deserves its black reputation as a pirate. Skuas chase a bird, in this case a gannet, and harass it, trying to make it drop its catch. Crash landing cuts short the attack. The sand eel is vital for the puffin. It eats nothing else from these waters. In fact, seabirds here eat more sand eels than any other type of fish. They take enormous numbers of them, but both birds and fish remain part of a balanced natural system. The birds take only the food they need, their numbers limited by what the sea can provide. If the fish population plummets, the bird population plummets too. There is a strong interrelationship. When we fish, the natural balance is often put at risk. During the 1970s, commercial fishermen began to exploit the Shetland's bonanza of sand eels, not as a food source, but for use as fertilizer. Before long, 50,000 tons of sand eels were being hauled out of the North Sea every year. To us, the sea holds a hidden treasure trove, an infinite resource. It stretches on forever, and what we do to it remains concealed from our view. But the ocean does have limits. In the Shetlands, fishing turned to overfishing, and within a few years the number of sand eels collapsed. Only when new legislation set strict limits could the fish population recover. Disaster was narrowly averted, just before it took its toll of the seabirds. In the Shetlands, fishermen discovered the truth. There is a limit to how many fish we can take from the sea. At At the edge of every ocean, there are great harbours, sheltering fishing fleets ready to take advantage of the seas. But fish are not the only animals we have decimated in the oceans. In Alaska, an entire population of marine mammals was virtually obliterated, its limits discovered only when it had nearly disappeared. During the 19th century, sea otters along this coast were hunted to the brink of extinction. In 1911, hunting was outlawed and the number of sea otters miraculously recovered. There are now so many otters that they are found even in busy harbours. The hunters were after their thick fur. Sea otters have the densest fur of any animal. A 6 square centimetre patch has more hairs on it than a dog has on its entire body. It's estimated that there are over 150,000 otters in Alaskan waters. They live in huge groups called rafts, any one of which may comprise 1,000 or more otters. The otter's return is a mixed blessing. At 1.5 meters long, these are large animals, and they have large appetites for clams and other shellfish. In such healthy numbers, they represent serious competition to fishermen. 2 different subspecies of sea otter live along the Pacific coast of the United States. One lives as far south as the kelp forests of California. There's a plentiful supply of food on the seabed, including one of the otter's favourites, sea urchins. The urchins feed on the giant kelp plants that grow right up to the ocean surface. People also have an appetite for sea urchins. They're eaten raw as sushi in Japanese cuisine. Harvesting them is a painstaking process. The urchins are prickly and they live in the thick forests of giant kelp. But there is tremendous demand, especially for California's red sea urchins. More than $50 million worth of these urchins are exported to Japan each year. It's fortunate that the human harvesters, along with sea otters, keep the population of urchins in check. Otherwise, they would destroy the kelp, one of the wonders of the natural world. Giant kelp grows at an astonishing rate, up to 30 centimetres a day. When it reaches the surface, it sprawls across the water in thick mats. Special boats are used to harvest the seaweed. It's a bit like mowing the grass, but on a huge scale. It's processed for use as a thickener in products ranging from yogurt to toothpaste. But kelp is even more important as a fertilizer. The hormones that make it grow so rapidly have the same effect on crops, boosting their growth rate. Seaweed is also loaded with minerals. As important as fertilizers are to agriculture, they are useless without one truly magical ingredient: fresh water. Virtually anywhere there is fresh water, we can grow food. The paddy fields of Asia can feed millions, thanks to the monsoon rains. Rain isn't the only source of water for agriculture. Massive amounts of water are stored on mountains as snow and ice. When this solid water turns back into a liquid, it has only one way to go: down. In South America, meltwaters from the high snowfields of the Andes nourish the mountainsides. People have been growing food here from long before the time of the Incas. And they have been growing the very same crops, including a protein-rich grain called quinoa, with a flavour similar to buckwheat. Quinoa is a major staple in the region. A traditional way of life is maintained, as it has been for centuries, by hard work and the simple gift of melting snow. Surprisingly, it's harder to grow food in the wettest regions of all, the rainforest. There is too much water. Rain leaches the goodness out of the poor soil, and trees lock up any spare nutrients. It's just possible to make a living here by farming. The people of the Rio Negro region of Brazil clear sections of the rainforest to grow the simple crop they depend on as a staple: manioc, also known as cassava root. Juice is extracted from the root, which is then ground and roasted to make a kind of farina or flour. It's a major source of carbohydrate, and not just for man. Even with copious amounts of water, man can only eke a simple living from the impoverished forest soil. But the rainforest isn't always wet. It has a dry season. After 5 months of rain and flooding, the waters finally subside. The Amazon River and its tributaries reach their lowest point. Ironically, it's at this time that much of this region is at its most productive. Many animals take advantage of the low water levels and clear weather to mate and raise their young. The Rio Negro is home to large freshwater turtles. As night falls, the female turtles emerge and climb up the sandy riverbanks to lay their eggs. Like all species of turtle, these red-headed turtles lay their eggs in shallow pits, which they then carefully fill in. This female has done all she can to protect her eggs. But as dawn breaks, thieves appear. Wakaris are the first to arrive. These primates usually feed on fruit, but they know a good thing when they see it and will come down out of the trees to search for the fresh eggs. The wakaris know from experience which sandbanks the turtles lay their eggs in, so it's hard to keep these protein and fat-rich meals hidden from them for long. The wakaris are not the only ones to take advantage of this seasonal delicacy. Local people also come to the riverbank to dig up the turtle eggs. Like the monkeys, they know the value of an easy meal. They also catch any turtles that have lingered on the shore. The river provides a good supply of protein from just one freshwater species, the red-headed turtle. Its eggs, mixed with manioc flour, and its meat provide a welcome change from the usual fish supper. We have long recognised the vital importance of water and all that it provides. Ancient cultures believed their rain gods wielded power over life and death. The Tatanac Indians of Mexico still worship their rain god every year, performing spectacular aerial rituals in his honour. From the Mayans and other lost civilizations up to our own time, any culture that loses touch with the value of water does so at its peril. In the Amazon basin, one local culture fully appreciates the natural rhythm of the seasons and the dramatic changes the rains bring. In most of the region, more than 2 meters of rain falls each year between December and May. The river swells into a torrent, and the local fishermen are ready and waiting for the thousands of fish being forced straight in their direction. Bamboo fishing platforms hang out over the raging water. The fishermen use large hooked poles to grab the fish. The technique is basic but extremely effective. And providing their platforms and nerves hold, this is a time of plenty. Water is never in short supply for man or animals in the Amazon basin. But there are many regions of the world where this fundamental commodity is a great luxury. This is a rare sight, camels in need of a drink. A camel can survive for days without access to water, but then it may drink so much water in one sitting that it would kill any other animal. Contrary to popular belief, the water is not stored in the hump, but in chambers in the stomach. The camel's hump stores fat, a reserve it will draw on during long periods without food. These camels could even quench their thirst with salt water, something no other land animal can do. Other desert dwellers have different tricks. Dawn in Namibia, southern Africa. Here the desert lies close to the sea, so in the early morning a thick layer of sea mist forms. A fog stand beetle. It's about to take a drink, right out of the air. Raising its abdomen towards the morning breeze, the beetle lets the water condense on its body and trickle down into its mouth. Further inland, in the drier deserts of Namaqualand, birds have their own ingenious way of obtaining water for their young. These are male sand grouse, which have a very active role in parenting. They have come to drink in this small pool in the bottom of a dried-up river. But while each one quenches its own thirst, it also soaks up water in its specially adapted breast feathers. Their young also need to drink, but their nests may be far away. Some birds make an 80-kilometre round trip every morning, just to carry precious water across the desert to their young. A clutch of newly born sand grouse awaits their father's return, perfectly camouflaged to avoid the attention of predators. When their father arrives, the tiny birds know where to find a drink. Our own ability to transport water has made it possible not only to survive in desert landscapes, but also to transform them. But how often are we using water wisely? Kilometres of pipes and tunnels, channels and aqueducts carry water to regions that could not otherwise support cities. In our efforts to tame the desert, rivers have run dry, or even begun to flow backwards. The tallest fountain in the world is in the middle of a desert, and half the water shot into the sky is wasted, evaporating before it can fall back to Earth. The shimmering city of Las Vegas, like many other cities in the US, is also sited in an arid desert. It receives less than 20 centimetres of rainfall a year. Populations that are measured in the millions live in regions with virtually no naturally occurring water. It must all be transported from other places, and that can lead to disaster. This was once a thriving freshwater lake, Mono Lake. But much of its water was extracted and diverted to Los Angeles. The lake was nearly pumped dry. Salts that leached upwards from underground have become concentrated by rapid evaporation. The lake water is now so salty that very few species can survive here. Only brine flies, brine shrimp, and the gulls that feed on them. No other animals can tolerate the extreme conditions. Although there are a great many flies here, there's very little else. Mono Lake has become an impoverished habitat. Parts of the shoreline are crusted with salt, a fate that may await many other lakes. We are the only species that can dam mighty rivers and make the water do our bidding. The colossal Hoover Dam stands over 40 stories high. It required enough concrete to pave a highway from New York City to San Francisco. But sometimes a river refuses to be tamed. The Mississippi is the largest river in the United States. There have been many attempts to divert it, to straighten its course, to contain or channel its waters. All of these efforts have led to the same disturbing result. The river now flows more strongly than ever. Floods often breach levees built to contain the river. Not surprisingly, the change has a profound effect on wildlife. The Mississippi Delta is home to thousands of brown pelicans. But these wetlands, where pelicans rear their young, are in trouble. Because the Mississippi is now flowing so strongly, its islands are disappearing and new ones are not forming. Sediment that would normally create islands is carried straight out to sea. The wetlands are disappearing at a rate of 100 square kilometres every year. For now, because the water is rich with nutrients, the pelicans and other birds can find plenty of fish to eat. As the delta changes, the wildlife will have to adapt or face eviction from their home. Over time, this region is likely to be an even more challenging place to live. Storm clouds gather ominously and often. Heavy rainfall in the Mississippi floodplain can lead to disaster. It has happened many times, but never as severely as in 1993. Torrential rain and flooding in New Orleans was just the beginning. There was no holding back this water. The Mississippi refused to be contained by the 1,500 levees built along its banks. Water goes where it wants to go. More than 20 million acres of farmland was soon underwater. 75 cities and towns were submerged in the worst floods in the region's history. Water can be a devastating force when it goes where we don't want it to. But water can also deliver usable, sustainable power, especially when it carries the kind of energy generated deep underground. Heat. It's this kind of water that lies beneath Iceland. The island sits right on top of one of the most active volcanic hotspots on Earth. Water is an efficient conductor of heat, but it expands as its temperature rises. The results are spectacular. Power stations harness this geothermal energy to heat and light Iceland's homes, with plenty left over for industrial use. This natural energy is comparatively clean, a welcome bonus. People soak up the warmth in nature's own heated swimming pools, a paradoxical pastime so close to the Arctic Circle. The heat at the Earth's core is normally inaccessible to man. In Iceland, water brings it within our grasp. Wherever water forces its way through the Earth's crust, there are hot springs. Apparently, we are not the only creatures to appreciate them. In the mountains of Japan, macaques soak in volcanically heated water. It seems the monkeys copied the idea from humans. Now they often spend hours a day basking in pools built specially for them. The monkeys easily survive bitterly cold winters, thanks to these superheated waters of life. The only disadvantage is that it seems much colder when they finally get out. More bathers, enjoying another warm natural spring. These soothing waters are in Florida. They're warm rather than hot springs. The Florida springs may look less dramatic than the geothermal springs of Iceland, but they are every bit as remarkable. These waters are part of a vast system of springs and underground caves that runs under much of this large state, and even extend out into the sea. West Indian manatees have followed the warm currents of fresh water inland from the sea. They normally live in salt water, but in the winter the warmth of the freshwater springs is very tempting. They seem to bask not only in the mineral-rich warm water, but also in the attention shown by their fellow bathers. The manatee is descended from a prehistoric plant-eating animal, which would wade through wetlands in search of food. This distant ancestor was closely related to the elephant, the manatee's nearest living cousin. Although these gentle giants enjoy the protection of man in the United States, they're still highly endangered, with only 2,600 West Indian manatees left in the wild. Part of the problem is that they seem to have no fear of man or his machines. Water seems to be the very essence of Florida. From springs to wetlands, from fishing grounds to water parks, the Sunshine State is saturated. An ample supply of rain falls on lush vegetation, and the water picks up acids from the plants and soil as it soaks away. The acid content of the rainwater gives it the power to dissolve and sculpt the limestone that lies below much of Florida. Water percolating up through the limestone creates an eerie effect. We know that these waters are part of an extensive system, but no one knows just how extensive it is. We do know that the system connects Florida's interior to the sea, underground. The springs are an unpredictable and dangerous place to explore. In the last 30 years, more than 50 divers have died in this mostly uncharted system, lost and out of air. These divers can have little idea of what they might find. They're entering an unknown world, a labyrinth of undiscovered mysteries. Scientists are fascinated by the peculiar organisms living in these caves. Who would think that a new form of life would be found underneath one of the world's most popular tourist areas? The secret of these caves is that they are home to a unique bacterium, which lives only at the interface between the layers of fresh and salt water. This might seem unimportant, but it is in fact the basis for a whole chain of underwater life, one that does not rely on sunlight. Between the underlying salt water and the clear fresh water above is a thin, murky film, full of the bacteria. They become food for these cave hydroids. Blind crayfish have a lifespan of more than 100 years. As yet, we have no idea how or why. An eel finds itself in the spotlight. This eel seems totally unafraid. It's probably the first time it's encountered a human. It may also be the last. All of the eels here are females. They live in these springs for more than 10 years before they mature and join the males of their species out in the sea. In this pristine water, the divers' lights reveal the creatures that live here in startling clarity. Many of the underground tunnels exit into the sea. Sea fish know where these tunnels open. They swim into the warm, fresh water to shelter as it makes its way out into the ocean. Finally, the fresh spring water wells up through the surrounding seawater. Sailing ships used to come here once to restock their supplies of drinking water. Modern visitors come for a very different reason. To encounter creatures who are far more at home here than we are. Sharks. Diving with blue sharks is admittedly dangerous, but the closer we get to these remarkable animals, the more we learn to respect and appreciate them. Sharks rarely deserve their terrifying reputation. Many, like these reef sharks, are no threat to humans. Thousands of people have come face to face with them, sharing the sea, just for a while. Sharks have survived virtually unchanged for millions of years, reminding us what fragile newcomers we are. We humans seem to believe that the world and all it holds is here for our use and enjoyment. Ultimately, this is not our world, but it is one we can learn to appreciate and protect. Water has the power to thrill. To relax. Is it any wonder that sometimes we wish life were more like a day at the beach? We flock to the seashore, the sun, the sand, but most of all, for water. The oceans, where it all began, are one frontier we have yet to conquer. We know far more of what lies below the waves than when we first went to sea, yet there is still far more to learn about the waters of life. We are made of water, but can never be at home within its world. Will we ever fully comprehend the magical power of this miraculous substance, which supports such a staggering variety of life? Earth may be the only place in the universe where water occurs not only as a liquid, but also as a solid and as a gas. A triple incarnation that transforms and envelops the whole world. From space, we can see Earth for what it really is. A blue planet. A world of water. And where there is water, there is life.